Hey guys, it's Alec, Torelli, and welcome to the Hand of the Day. I'm bringing you today's special episode from the Vidara, where I spent all of last summer during the World Series of Poker, and I got the privilege of playing some of the biggest cash games in the world. I got to play in Ivey's room. There was an awesome 300, 600, 1200 game, and today I'm doing a throwback to the hand I played during that game. So we started with a $250,000 buy-in. The stakes are high. Things are getting heated up, middle of the night, when the following hand comes up. A good pro in the hijack raises to 4,000, which is a standard raise size opening for this game. But the key thing to keep in mind is that there was a weak player in the big blind. Unfortunately, I can't name any names, but he's definitely the player that everybody was gunning for at the table. So I think that this is going to dramatically change the pros' opening range here. Some players would open with the same range regardless because they are ABC type players that only play their own cards regardless of the situations around them. But pros adjust their opening range based on the variables at the table. One of the big things to consider is who's in the big blind and who they're actually going to be the most likely to play the hand with. In this case, I think the pro is opening wider, perhaps even double the range he would sometimes otherwise open, because he knows that he has a good chance of playing the pot heads up in position against the weakest player at the table. I'm on the button and I look down and pick up two kings. A great spot for me, a great hand. And I have an easy 3-bet. But what I wanted to do here was mix up my play a little bit and throw people for a loop and potentially keep the big blind in the pot. So I decided to 3-bet to 10K. Now this does two things that are really advantageous for me. Number one is it allows the big blind to call cold, which is generally not something that I think most people need to consider because most of the time big blinds don't really call 2-bets cold here. But this is definitely a player that can easily throw in one 10K chip, call a bet pre-flop. It's not too big and he could see the flop. What this also does is if he does call cold, it allows the original opener to 4-bet, force me out of the pot and keep the pot heads up with the big blind. So I think this makes me more likely to get a lot more action both from the big blind and the original opener. What it also does is by 3-betting small here, I sort of allow myself to mix up my play and really punish the people to my right and prevent them from opening. If I could mix up my play and have kings in my range here when I 3-bet really, really small, I could also have other hands like 5-6 suited. So it really allows me to mix up my play and balance my range, having weak hands as well as strong hands. It always keeps them guessing. And I feel like a lot of times when people make small 3-bets, it's too often hands that they just want to get to a showdown with and isolate the pot with, but they always 3-bet bigger when they have aces or kings or something like that. So I like to mix it up, 3-bet small with this type of hand, and just keep my options open going to the flop. Anyway, the big blind folds, unfortunately, and the other pro calls, which I expect him to do pretty often, and we go heads up to the flop. The flop comes Jack 7-6 with Jack 7 of clubs. Great flop for me. I have two red kings though, no backdoor flush draw, but coordinated board, a lot going on. Original raiser checks. I make a standard C-bet of 15K. He check calls. Turn, unfortunately, comes a queen of clubs for me, which is a really, really terrible card. Not only does it bring the flush card, which is, of course, a scare card for my hand, but it also makes it a lot harder for my opponent to call me with a worse hand. All the hands that he check called the flop with, something like Jack X, maybe pocket 8s, maybe a 7, maybe 9s or 10s, now are probably going to fold. So the queen is an overcard to all the cards that he could have called me with when he has one pair. So the only times that I'm really going to get action on this card is if he's making a big hero call against me, which we didn't really have much history going on at the table yet. I wasn't really confident betting 3 streets with my kings for value. So I have to check behind here for pot control, see what happens, and hopefully go for value on a good river. The river comes a deuce of clubs. Now putting 4 clubs on the board, which of course is a terrible card for me. A lot of hands, could have possibly improved. And of course, the worst thing about this card is not only that it could help him improve to a better hand, but it's pretty much impossible for me to get value from a worse hand. So my only option here is to really check behind if he checks, of course, and hope to win at showdown from something like ace-jack or whatever he has. Anyway, he decides to bet now, and he bets 25,000. So he bets half the pot here, and I think this is a default fold. Most people just fold here without much consideration, but I really tried to think about all the types of hands that he would bet this way with. And I think most players aren't calling re-raises out of position with offsuit hands because they play really, really badly post-flop, and there's not that many offsuit hands he could call. I block 2 of the kings, so he could have something like King Jack with the king of clubs, Or he could have ace-jack with the ace of clubs, I guess. But I think sometimes he check raises the river with the ace of clubs because it's so likely that I'm going to either bluff or value bet my hand that hit a club on the river. So I think most of the times he doesn't have the ace of clubs here, especially with such a small bet. I feel like most of the time if he's going to bet the ace of clubs, he goes for much bigger value. So I'm really putting him on something like a bluff or a mediocre flush that bets for value. Since there's not that many offsuit hands that call my 3-bet pre-flop, that's a really important thing to keep in mind because he's not really having too many hands like Jack 10 with the 10 of clubs in them that are going to value bet. I think most of the time he would fold that. Maybe he would call a 6K more bet out of position, but it is a really bad hand. It plays terribly post-flop out of position against a good player. So I think he might just fold that right away, and he also, maybe he doesn't value bet that on the river. Maybe he goes for a bluff catch and check calls with that hand. So I think when he bets the river here, a lot of his range is like something like maybe King Jack with the King of clubs that he would decide to value bet. Or maybe he has 2 10s with a 10 of clubs or something like that he's going to value bet. But all those hands, if he has 10s, 9s, or 8s with a club, he could also have 10s, 9s, or 8s without a club and be turning them into a bluff. He could also have suited hands like 7-8 suited, which would have called the flop, or Jack 10 suited, which is much more likely than Jack 10 offsuit. And since all the Jack 10 suited hands can't have a club in them because, of course, the Jack of clubs is on the board, he's going to be bluffing with all of those hands. So I also don't think he's ever going to really bet 2-pair or a set here just because it's not that likely I'm going to hero call him. And a lot of my range does have a club in it. I could have checked back the turn with ace-king with the King of clubs or something like that. I mean, I could easily have a club in my range here. So I just don't think he's going for worse value. So I think there's not that many hands he's value betting. And if you really add up all the possibilities, it's kind of likely that he is going to be bluffing here the times that he does have a bluff. I'm also getting a great price. I only need to be right 25% of the time to justify calling profitably here, and his bet sizing sort of entices me to call, and it gives him a cheap price on his bluff. Anyway, I talked myself into it. I decided to call here, and he turns over 7-8 of hearts, and I win the hand. I think I could have been wrong here a lot of the time. I'm not saying that I'm a superhero because I called here and won, but I think the important thing is to separate the results from the actual hand and look through all the numbers and see if you have the odds to call here. And his bet sizing really does give credence to making a big call in the river. So I called and won. It was a great hand for me, and that's it for the hand of the day. For more information on this hand, check out my blog, alectorelli.com. I share a lot of the math behind this hand, the reasons I made my decision, and I crunch some of the numbers to go over things after my sessions, and I share with you some of the more intimate reviews that I do about my poker playing sessions to improve my game after every session I play. That's it. I hope you like this video. If you have hands you'd like me to review, I'll head over to my blog, submit them to me, and I will select the best ones and put them on this channel. That's it for today. See you guys next time. Cheers.